I am woman phenomenally. Phenomenal woman? That's me, Maya Angelou. Welcome to this segment of the Afrocentrist podcast, The Woman, Her Story, and Her Impact, where I get to speak to women from across the globe, sharing their stories and how they are impacting their world. Coming to you every Wednesday, 4 p.m. GST. Of course, with your favorite show host, the energetic EJ. So make it a date with me every Wednesday. The Afrocentrist Podcast, proudly African. Hello, and welcome to another episode on the Afrocentrist Podcast. And this segment, The Woman, Her Story, Her Impact, where I get to speak to women from across the world, sharing their stories and how they are impacting their world. I am your host, the energetic EJ, and I'm super excited to be here one more time to share another story. Like, seriously, what these stories does for me, and I hope for you too, is kind of give me references to possibilities, to strengths, to hope that is available right around us. And it's always a pleasure to share the stories of these amazing women who have either gone through the toughest or just, had life easier, but still coming out of whatever it is that they have faced to then impact their world in their own ways, whether it's by sharing their stories or by actually going out to do something extra, whatever it is. The point here is they have not allowed their past to hold them back, but actually propel them to become better humans and positively impacting their world. And that is why I find so much joy in what I do. Today on the show, I have another beautiful woman that I'm going to be sharing her story with you. And her story is quite interesting. Now, I'm going to read a little bit about her, tell you a little bit about her before I bring her up on the screen. My guest today is Naeema Olatunji. She's an author, a chiropractor, and entrepreneur. Dr. Naeema is the author of Raised as a Lie, her memoir, which explores the story of growing up amidst deceit, denial, and racism, and bravely takes the reader from family secrets to freedom. Now, Dr. Naeema Olatunji is not only an author, she is a mom of 3 beautiful children. And she owns a business. And she's also, like me, the host of the Elevate Now podcast, where she champions women to pursue their passions with practical advice and resources. I love it. In 2018, Dr. Naeema's eldest son's health crisis inspired her to go back to school to become a doctor of chiropractic. She founded Elevate Family Chiropractic, and for over 5 years, she has served the greater North Atlanta community. Now, let me tell you a little bit about her book, which we'll be diving into today. Her book again is titled Raised as a Lie. Raised as a Lie speaks to biracial and people of color everywhere who have been burdened with family secrets or shackled by racism. You will love this book if you have ever struggled with worthiness or felt invisible, or if you have ever experienced childhood traumas, like almost everybody has, haven't we all? And the indelible scars they have behind, what they have left behind. Dr. Naeema's hope is that you will discover your own path to freedom and choose to be outrageously vulnerable, even as you lay your hand on this book and read it. So I hope that at the end of this episode, you are going to get a copy of Raised as a Lie by Dr. Naeema Olatunji. Now, I'm ready to bring on my guest to the screen. You know how we do it. It's about time now to grab your cup of tea, your cup of coffee, or your bottle of water as we sit and listen in to this story. I am intrigued as you are. I want to find out, how did she go from, that state of deceit, denial, into freedom and into the woman that she is today? Sit back, relax, don't go anywhere, and I'll be right back with my guest for the day.
I've been lied to. What would you do if everything you thought about yourself was a lie? What if your worthiness was tied to your identity? How do you love and hate parts of yourself? How do you forgive when you can't forget? This was me until one thing changed everything. Raised as a lie.
Woo! And my guest is here. Guys, before I even talk to my guest, did you just see that video? Like, do you feel like you need to read this book right now? That was an amazing, amazing book video. Like, wait, what? Hi, Dr. Naeema. How are you doing today?
I am so amazing. Thank you so much for having me on. I am beyond excited and honored to be here talking to you, energetic EJ. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. It's such a pleasure to have you here. And I love your story. I mean, I want to know more because just a clip from your profile and from that short video about your book. And it's just interesting that your book is about your story, at least your childhood, how you grew up, and all of that. So I am here, just here to binge and listening, like, tell us what exactly happened.
Tell us more. Tell us
You
more.
know.
That's so funny.
So, raised as a lie. First of all, how did you come about that name? Like, why did you choose that particular title?
You know, I think that that's such a great question because I had this moment where I just knew. Have you ever been so clear when an idea comes to you that you're like, that's just the truth? And that truth has this resonance, and you know that that's the whatever the thing is. And for me, it was the title of the book. And that actually didn't come until after I agreed to tell my story. For a very, very long time, I think I made a conscious choice, even though it was very, very subconsciously based, not to share my story. And here's the other thing. This is what I know to be true. All of us live our lives as normalized, meaning that we just live our lives knowing that what we're experiencing is our normal. And it doesn't even have to be the normal. It's just our normal. If you live in snow country, it's just accepted that it's cold.
It's snow
Nobody
there.
like goes, "Oh my God, it's cold." It's just cold. And that's just part of your reality. And so for me growing up, I don't think that I really truly analyzed and dissected how it felt to always be an outsider in my own family, to never feel comfortable in my own skin, to never feel like I was accepted. It just was my norm. I knew that my family loved me, and yet I never fit in. I never belonged. I was always on the outside, and I always wished that I looked differently. And I think that once I decided I'm going to be vulnerable enough to share this story, I think the title just came. And in that moment of clarity, I knew that that was true. And low
Wow.
key, if I'm completely honest about it, the title is totally provocative. And that is so me.
Intentional.
Such a dramatic person sometimes. And I have to laugh because when people call me on it, I'm like, what? No, not me. It's totally me. It is totally me.
Love it, love it. But why do you feel, or what was it that made you feel it was the right time for you to share this story? Because I know that sharing those stories, those difficult ones, are really, really tough. And I can relate, just shutting it out like, okay, this is my story. I decide to shut it down. But what was it that gave you that courage or that desire to want to share your story?
I decided in the moment of the probably the lowest point in recent memory in my personal life.
Mm.
And I am a divorced person after 22 years of marriage. And after surviving that and feeling like that was the lowest point ever in my life, it turns out I was wrong. And there was a lower point. And this is the reason why. I had thought that I had survived the divorce and I had survived being a single mom and raising my kids and being in graduate school, going back and figuring out how to survive through financial just crisis after crisis, and then
Wow.
opening up a business and surviving a pandemic. Like, I thought I had done all the hard things, and here I am at 49 years old thinking that life is finally good because I met what I thought was my forever man, until he walks out on me. And we were standing in the practice, my chiropractic practice that I had built. And when he said he was leaving, I thought everything was over. It was the most surreal experience, and it reduced me to a shadow of who that I am and who
Yes.
I had built myself up to be. And when I
Mm.
was on my knees, literally clutching his jeans, begging him not to leave, feeling that somehow all of my worthiness was tied into him staying. And then he walked out anyways. And I laid on that floor and I felt broken. And I felt like this was a moment that I was not going to recover from, because all the other things that somehow I always felt like there was hope and I felt like I could push through. And I remember looking down at myself and thinking, you're not broken, you're shattered. Like, you're 49. How did you fall this far again? And I didn't have the tools to get up. I literally phoned two of my friends, or maybe one, and the other one called the other, and they literally drove to my practice and picked me up off of the floor and sat
Mm.
with me for hours. When I could not do it for myself, they stood in the gap. And the questions that they were asking me made me confront some really unresolved decisions that I
Mm.
had made about myself when I was
Mm.
a very little girl. And
Mm.
I didn't realize that that little injured girl was making decisions for me as an adult. And in that moment, that's when I knew that I would write this book. And I would write this book not from this, look at me, I'm so evolved and I'm successful and I got all the things. I wanted to tell the story of the broken parts. I wanted to tell the
Mm.
story of, this is what happens when you peel back all the layers and you stand bare naked in front of a mirror and you look at yourself and you finally see who and whom you belong and who you are, so that you can start putting yourself back together. And that's why I decided I'm going to write the book and I'm going to tell all the things, even the things that I didn't want to tell, because I decided that I'm either going to tell it all or I'm not going to tell it all.
Wow. Wow. Like, that must have been hard.
Was. I spent every single Friday afternoon in therapy. I did not miss a therapy appointment for 7 months, every single Friday. I sat in that man's office, and bless Ernest Eglin, because if it was not for him, my book wouldn't be in existence, and I would still be fighting internally and struggling with that little girl who was running the show. And that's how I made it through. I'm the biggest advocate now for mental health therapy and whatever that looks like, right? For me, it was talk therapy, but it also was hypnotherapy. It also was acupuncture. It was also spiritual readings. It was spiritual healing. Like, I took myself on as a project, and the success was the only option.
Like, even from the way you're speaking, I can only imagine the damage that, childhood trauma can do to a person, right? What was the source of this? Now looking at you, sharing your story and, being free to be vulnerable, what was the source of this? Tell us that story.
So I am the only brown person in my family. I grew up in an all-white family, all-white schools, all-white neighborhoods. And I, not that your readers see, but I am a brown-skinned, light, but brown-skinned, curly-haired girl. And I have an older sister who's 7 years older than me, and she was going through her own things. Clearly, I didn't know that at the time. And my earliest memories are her tormenting me with her words that I was dirty and I was unloved, and I was never going to be a part of the family in the way that everybody else was. And I couldn't refute her words. We lived on a farm. I knew, even at 3 years old, I know that when things get dirty, they're brown, and everything on the farm is dirty, right? And I couldn't refute her words. And so I would stay in the bathtub and scrub my skin and try to be, create this image of myself. My mom used to have this nervous habit, and I tell about this story in the book. My mom used to have a nervous habit of picking the skin on the sides of her thumbs, right? And it was really unconscious habit, and she would do it when she was, anxious or something. But I didn't know that. I noticed her doing it. This was closer to, when I was 4, and I subconsciously picked up the habit, and I don't even remember doing it. But I remember one night in the bathtub, I had stayed in longer, and my mom had come in to dry me off, and she looks down at my body and she says, "Oh my goodness, you look like a little raisin. You are all shriveled up." And I remember looking at my hands while she had the towel wrapped around me. And my hands they looked like, these little tiny raisins. And I noticed the sides of my thumbs where I had, subconsciously had picked the skin, and the skin was white. And I had this whole sort of surreal out of body experience as this little nearly 4-year-old And I thought, if I picked all the skin off of all of my body,
Oh,
that I would be loved, that I would be the same as my family, and my sister's words could no longer hurt me. They
hurt
could no
you.
longer be true. But I never said anything to any adults in my life. I never shared my pain.
Mm.
I internalized all of it. I never even made my sister wrong. I idolized my sister. I didn't hate her. I wanted her to love me. And
Oh,
so
wow.
I I think that not until I was an adult was I willing and ready to look at the damage that that had actually
Has
caused.
done.
Yep. And I lived my whole life that way until I was nearly 18. And there was a situation where we had moved to this really small town in Arizona, and there was no diversity in the town. And,
Mm.
here we are living in this all white town, and it's my senior year in high school, and I get cornered in the cafeteria by three of these senior high school boys who were
Oh,
just
no.
super thuggish, right? And the high school kids, it was in a desert, right? It's Arizona, small tiny town in Arizona, and it's surrounded by hundreds of miles of desert in every direction. And so the high school kids used to go really far out in the sand dunes, and they build these bonfires and just hang out and get drunk and do all what other stupid things high school students do.
Mm.
And I got cornered a couple months into me being at the school by these boys who threatened to take me out into their hangout spot, and they were going to lynch me. Only
Wow.
I didn't know what lynching meant.
Oh,
I
my
knew it
God.
wasn't good, and I was terrified, but I didn't know what it meant. And at this point, I am 17, nearly 18, and my sister no longer lives with us. And she's the only person I can think to call, because remember, I
Mm.
have told nobody. I have talked to nobody about my, my experience and my fears and my
Mm.
thoughts about, being this brown girl. Of course, I'd asked my mother, multiple times growing up, and she just always, kept up the lie and said that, the man on my birth certificate was my father. Mind you, he's blonde haired, blue eyed.
Oh, no.
And so I had no answers. I knew that I was different, but I had no answers. And so when I called my sister that afternoon, I was afraid. And she was the only one that I could think that I could talk to.
Talk to.
And I just was like, what was it? Why were they threatening me? What does lynching mean? What's happening? And she wouldn't answer my questions. And I thought, that's awfully
Wow.
strange, because this woman has spent my entire life using every opportunity to cut me down. And the next thing I know, I'm being summoned into my mother's room. And so here I am at nearly 18 years old, when my mom finally has to deal with the fact that she has to tell me the truth, because now it's about my physical safety. And her sharing, her truth, that my father clearly is not the man that's on my birth certificate, but he's a Black man, is so unsettling. And so it's another one of those, bathtub moments for me, where everything just slows down, and it becomes surreal. And it's sort of like the movie moment where the camera pans around in a circle around you,
Yeah.
and you don't know up from down. And I don't remember breathing, and, all of those moments where, what does this mean? I mean, my family's low-key racist, right? Like, I heard racist jokes growing up my whole life. And all I thought was, what does that mean if I'm Black? Are people still going to love me? Like, who am I going to talk to about this? Um, and so I think that we all sort of come to these moments in our life where we realize that the things that happen in our childhood don't just stay in our childhood, that they
Mm.
affect every adult decision we make, either large or small. And I think, it's important to become aware of how that inner child in you is affecting your current adult life.
Mm. Wow, such a journey, such a journey. So how then, I'm glad that you're now, you've gone through therapy and now you're able to speak about this. But even in the speaking, you can still feel some of those pain, going on in there, right? So how did you get to deal with it? Like now that you know that you are out of it, like how would you say somebody should deal with? So this could be anything. The trauma could be anything, as a child, maybe you being called names or just being abused or anything. How do you deal with it? How do you deal with trauma?
What I believe more than anything, and I'm going to speak mostly to adults right now. What I believe more than anything is that we are responsible for our own mental health. We are responsible for how we show up in the world. And it is nobody else's responsibility to fix you.
Mm.
And having said that, I do not say that lightly. My belief is that we are not here to get anything. All of us as human beings have entered this world to give of our blessings, to give of our gifts and our talents, and not to have our hand out to receive, but how can we help? How can we give of the things that are inside of us that is supposed to be shared with the world? But we cannot do that if we are walking around injured and in pain.
Mm.
And so I believe then that if our worthiness as an inside job is our responsibility, then whatever whole mental health looks like for you to emotionally come to a space for which that you can love yourself unconditionally, whatever
Mm.
that path, whatever that journey looks like that you do not know. As Lao Tzu says, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with
With
one
one
step,
step. Mm.
right? You just take the first step
Step.
and then you take the next step. And all of this is with the desire to be whole, the desire to be healed, the desire to show up as the best possible version of yourself.
Mm.
And that looks different for different people.
Everybody, absolutely.
And that's how I think that ultimately that we deal with anything in life. Please look inside. Please look in a mirror. Please recognize that your anger that you are externalizing, that you are projecting on other people is really truly
That's
internal hurts
inside.
that you have been
Mm.
unwilling to deal with.
Mm.
And, the saying is true that a brick will fall on you, and it is your warning until the whole wall falls on you because you have ignored the warnings. I think that we all need to pause and take moments to become very present in our thoughts and be mindful of ourselves. So often I think that we're walking around this world asleep,
Mm.
unconscious.
Mm.
And we would think that would be so irresponsible and dangerous for somebody to fall asleep at the wheel. And yet we are all driving our own
Lives.
vehicle of
Oof.
ourselves showing up in the world, and we are asleep. We are unconscious. We are not aware of how that we are showing up for other people and what we project onto other people, and then claiming that other people make us feel a
Oh,
certain way. That's just a
wow.
lie. That is a lie that you are telling yourself. You choose your own feelings. You choose how you react to things. Our thoughts and our feelings are things that we put on, just like we choose the clothes we put on our body.
Where?
If
Mm.
you simply can become aware and in tune to this reality, it is exactly like gravity. You can believe it or not, but I promise you,
It
you jump off
exists.
of that building, you're only going one way, and it ain't
Damn.
up.
Wow. How then do we become aware? because like you said, you're so correct when you said a lot of us are like just working like zombies. We are not even aware. We don't even know where the thoughts are coming from. We're not aware of the roots of the reason that we see life the way that we see life, the way the reason we believe the things that we believe. How then do we become aware as adults when this has become our subconscious? And from learnings now, for people who are really interested to know, we know that our subconscious is like the larger part of what controls who we are. Our consciousness is just like a tiny bitty, witty percentage. So how do people become aware?
I love this part of the conversation because I think that this is so vital and critical that each one of us take these steps. For me, it's meditation. For me, it's quietness. It is your commitment to sitting down and sitting still. You
Oh
are never
God.
going to come to know yourself in chaos. You are never going to come to know yourself in the moments for which that your limbic brain, which is the emotional brain, it's your mid part of your brain, when it's running the show, I cannot promise you that your frontal cortex, that executive functioning portion of how your mind it works and controls things, it's not in control when your emotional brain is running the show. How you quiet all of that to get to the real honest core of who it is that you are and actually examining your thoughts. That's in quiet time. You spend some time in silence. So this is what I used to believe. All of the things that we've talked about so far has been things that I have had to come to understanding myself by living it. It is not things that I simply read in a book. So therefore, I believe them to be true. I believe them to be true because I had to live them myself. I know that they're true for every person and not just me, because they are
Principles. Yeah.
laws of the universe. And these universal laws do not apply to just some of us. They apply to all of us.
Oh.
And the necessity of getting quiet and getting still so that you can become aware of your own perceptions, because you are not aware of these giant glasses that we're all walking around with. They are lenses for which that you are viewing the world, but they are invisible to us. And so we don't realize that we have these lenses on that are creating perceptions, but those perceptions do not mean that they are true. Just because you have a feeling or you experience an emotion does not mean that it's a fact. It means that this is an emotion that you are feeling. But let's get beyond the emotion that you're actually feeling so that we can figure out, where's the origins? Why do I feel this way? Where did this thought come from? Who planted it there? Is this just sort of like a human race sort of thought consciousness that I have adopted? Because we all have, right? We all have sort of adopted, and we're walking around with these ideas that we never agreed to, or we were not the originators of them, but we have agreed to them. We have, unconsciously signed the little document that says, yes, I too vote for this. But do we really? And I think that the moments of silence are necessary, because when we can examine, I don't remember, this is such a beautiful thought, and I don't remember the author is, but an unexamined life, i.e., an unexamined mind, is not a life that's worth living. You do not want your mind that you have not become aware of running your show so that you can continue to be asleep at the wheel, because that's not where your fullest potential comes from. You can't possibly imagine that you are going to live the life that you have been set here to live if you are asleep at the wheel and letting other people, your family, your friends, your community make decisions for you, and they're not your truest, highest thoughts and ideas. And ideologies. And so for me, it's mindful meditation. It's getting quiet.
Absolutely.
You don't have to go and spend 8 hours doing it. God help us all. Spending 5 minutes in your brain is a long time, people. So just a few
Absolutely.
minutes, if you just start out there, you can grow it to however long that works for you. But spending that quiet time is essential. For me, it's first thing in the morning before, I do all the other things. I think that that's a great time. But whenever you can find the time, I believe, like Nike, just do it.
Just do
Just do it.
it.
Don't make any
Just do it.
excuses. Stop telling
Yeah.
yourself the lies, the reasons why you can't do it. Just do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like someone once said, one of my guests once said, and I can't remember who he quoted as well. Like, we all make excuses, but do we make excuses to do it or not to do it? You can make excuses to do it or you don't want to do it. And I know that, sitting still, like I've heard this phrase now in the past, week and now over and over again, like that. I feel like, what, this is my message, really. Like, this is my message. And I hope that this is your message too as you watch this episode. And I know that, silence, being still is one of the hardest thing that you can ever do as a human, and especially as an adult, because you close your eyes to start, and then that is when you remember everything that you were supposed to do, everything. So I'm a person of faith, and the moment you see to say, you know what, okay, let's pray, that is when you see, I haven't sent this message, I need to do this, I need to, that everything just comes at you. But what we're saying here, being still and just being quiet, is a practice, and it's attainable. And just like, Dr. Naeema said, just start. Start. If morning doesn't work for you yet, start. Once you remember, I remember this is something that helped me, when I started to worry, like, oh my God, I'm not praying as much as I should pray. And so I think I listened to a message years ago by Andrew Womack, I wouldn't forget. And what he admonished in that is, the time you are using to complain and beat yourself up that you haven't prayed, the moment you remember that you haven't said your prayer, just say it. Rather than complain like, oh my God, I missed it again. Dude, just that moment,
Right.
you have just been reminded. Pray. Simple.
Right.
So it's the same thing. The moment you remember, like, oh my God, I haven't sat still for a long time. Dude, even if it's 60 seconds, like, you do not know what 60 seconds can do, of stillness, of blanking out, of seeing whatever your favorite color is, make it your canvas when you're going blank, right? It could be red, it could be black, it could be white. Just 60 seconds of silence. I know it's hard, but it is attainable. It is attainable. Thank you so much, Dr. Naeema. Thank you so much. What would your word be for people who are going through one form of rejection or another that is, just making them feel so unworthy of who they are? And like you said, there is no way under this firmament, under heavens, that we are going to live to our fullest potentials if we don't believe and love who we are in our totality. This is not to say you're perfect, right? You have your bad side, you have your good side, but you accepting you in your totality, the good, the bad, the ugly. How? What do you have to say to them?
I think that this idea that we are walking around with, that somehow that we need to find worthiness outside of ourselves, is false. But I think also that there is this moment for which that, for me, like you, I am a spiritual person, and I believe that there is a higher being that has called me to step into my own self. Now, mind you, I feel like I was doing an okay to maybe good job before, up until 49. But I feel like in this last year and a half, what I have come to is a much deeper level of my own spirituality. And
Mm.
I think that that's what I love the most is knowing that we are constantly evolving and growing. And
Yes.
having said that, something that I have struggled with that I highly encourage your listeners to do is to give yourself grace, to
Mm.
give yourself the space to be exactly where you are, to forgive yourself for everything that you believe that you have not done or
Mm.
have become, to stop shoulding on yourself, to stop saying, I should have done this, I should be doing this, I should have this, to give yourself the grace to extend love to yourself just like you would your best friend, your daughter, your son, your mom, and to find the space in your heart for which that you can love yourself, and
Mm.
then knowing that you are a work in progress. And the only way that I know to build from there is to put one foot in front of the other and do the thing that you say that you're going to do. Make a small promise to yourself and then keep it, and then keep keeping it, and then make a bigger promise to yourself and then keep it. For me, it was hydrating.
Mm.
It was the smallest thing that I could do. So I don't drink
Mm.
enough water. So at night, I grab a bottle of water and I put it next to my bed. So the very
That.
first thing that I do in the morning is to drink water, right?
Mm.
And every day that I keep my promise to myself, it builds in my own self-worth, because we just talked about that. Your worthiness is an inside job. Nobody gets to give that to you. You
Mm.
can't buy it. Amazon doesn't have it. You can't borrow it from somebody else. You have to give it to yourself. That means you have to do the work. And in doing the work, just start wherever you are and find something that you know you should be doing and start there. Just begin.
Amazing. And by the way, I've been meaning to say this since, but I keep, getting into the conversation that I forget to say, you look gorgeous. We're 49. My goodness.
Thank you. I'm actually 50 and I'm about to be 51 in like a month.
Oh,
And is that
beautiful.
crazy? Is that so crazy when you think about how fast life goes? This
Wait
is
a
the reason
minute.
I
Did
don't
you
think that we should.
wait a minute? Did you just say in a month? What month are you again?
I'm actually, it's a little bit more than a month because I realize we're not in March yet, but my birthday is April 13th.
April 11th here.
Aries run the world, just in case the rest of you were wondering.
Oh,
Yes,
that is
yes.
so good. That is so good. Happy birthday in advance.
I was about to say the same thing. Happy birthday in advance to you. Yes, 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 yes.
Wow, amazing. This has been an amazing conversation, so lifting. The connection is deep, the message is clear. And thank you for stepping out to share your story, giving others the permission to also share theirs. Like, I know how difficult it can be to share those stories, especially those one that broke you. But the truth is, there is power in sharing. Your healing process begins or continues from there sometimes when you're able to just become so vulnerable. You share it, you hear it out loud, and you're able to deal with it. And so I hope that today's episode has encouraged you or inspired you to also come out of your shell and stop being broken, because you can be mended. In your sharing, there is power. And this is one of the reasons why I do what I do, why I share the stories of women, because I know that in sharing their stories, someone out there It could be you watching me right now or you listening to me right now. You are encouraged and inspired to also share your story. And I hope that you get that courage today to do the same thing. Thank you for being here today. Until I come your way again with another person with their story. But before we go, I need to mention here, how can we get the book? Like, it's so interesting. Like, I forgot it's a book.
Thank you.
It's so deep. I forgot we're talking about a book. Like, well, it's a real life story. So it's not just a book, but how can we lay hold on it?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Thank you. Thank you so much. And the best place to find out how to get the book and more about what's happening is the website raisedasalie.com.
Fantastic. Awesome. I'm going to put that on the screen and also in the description of this episode, both on the video and on the audio edition. So please, please lay your hands on the book and go read it. And I am so sure, like you heard it from Dr. Naeema herself, but this is just like a tiny bit of it. You need to learn, like go read the real story, the real gist, and be inspired. Thank you so much, Dr. Naeema, for being here. It's such a pleasure to meet you, to connect with you, and to share this screen with you. Thank you so much. All right, guys, I'll see you next week with another story. You keep being amazing. Remember, keep learning, keep growing, to keep living. Bye-bye.